welcome. I would like to welcome you to another episode of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And if you would do me a favor, please subscribe to wherever you're listening. Please subscribe to wherever you're watching. It definitely means a lot to me. So we're here. We're in the NBA Finals. The NBA Finals starts on Thursday. And we have Boston and Golden State going up for the ultimate prize, which is the NBA Championship. And, of course, this episode, I'm going to give my predictions. I'm going to talk about how Boston got there. I'm going to talk about how Golden State got there, X Factor, stuff like that. I'm going to pretty much give my predictions and break down the finals. But I do want to kind of start and give a little bit of credit to Miami. Now, I'm not going to say credit. Let me not say that. I do kind of want to touch on Miami. I don't want to touch on it too much because they lost. But a lot of people now, the questions are, where does Miami go from here? Miami was the number one overall seed in the East, and ultimately they got to the Eastern Conference Finals. And what we saw in the Eastern Conference Finals was Miami is a very limited team. Outside of Jimmy Butler, they don't really have a consistent player. We thought it would be Bam Adebayo, but he was very inconsistent. They paid Kyle Lowry to be consistent, but he was inconsistent. Now, I said this. Shouts out to the GOAT podcast with Marcus. I said this. The end of a playoff series usually brings clarity to your team. It brings clarity to what needs to improve, what went wrong. There's a lot of things that it brings. And the clarity that the Miami-Boston series brought, at least for Miami, was they need a consistent second score. Now, a lot of people ask now they need to go get a star. They need to go get maybe a Bradley Beal, go get maybe a Donovan Mitchell, one of those type players. But I say that's only if Victor Oladipo does not turn into the Victor Oladipo that they thought they were getting. They thought they were getting the Victor Oladipo from Indiana. Now, I understand due to injury that hasn't been the case, so we'll see. But that is the Victor Oladipo they need. And we saw flashes of it in the finals. In the Eastern Conference Finals, but they need more consistency from him. Now, I know that's kind of a lot to ask, his first year being back, but if Victor Oladipo can come back and be the Victor Oladipo from the Pacers, which was an all-star and a lethal scorer, then I don't think Miami needs another superstar. But that's really banking on Victor Oladipo. Not saying it's just him, because Bam needs to be better. I think they're looking at that Duncan Robinson contract, like how can we get off that? Because they paid Duncan Robinson to be a spot-up shooter, even though they know that he is not good defensively. Well, the problem was this year, or at least this playoff run, he was bad defensively and he couldn't hit shots. So what do you do with that? I think they're now. I know going into this year, I said that probably the move of the offseason was getting Kyle Lowry, that is the Miami Heat. But I didn't know that he was going to just collapse like he did in the playoffs. Now, I think Miami can lie to themselves. Miami possibly can lie to themselves and be like, yeah, well, Kyle Lowry was hurt and a lot of players were hurt and Jimmy Butler even got hurt. That's why we lost. No, you lost because you didn't have a consistent number two scorer. And you asked Jimmy Butler to do something that he's not really prone to doing, and that's scoring the ball. Now, he can score the ball, but he's not used to scoring the ball. Let me not say used to scoring the ball. That's not his number one trait. His number one trait is being, defense, being a glue guy. Well, a glue guy to some people, but I think Miami's going to be okay. There's decisions to be made. Like, what do you do with Kyle Lowry? What do you do with Duncan Robinson's contract? Tyler Euro, he got hurt, but even still, when he was healthy in these playoffs, he was damn near unplayable because kind of like Duncan Robinson, he wasn't hitting. He wasn't really doing anything productive. It's Miami has some decisions to make, and I think I trust Pat Riley. I trust the Miami Heat organization that they're going to be able to retool and do what they do. But a lot of this is predicated on Victor Oladipo. And if Victor Oladipo is able to come back, after the offseason, come back and be the Victor Oladipo that can score, was a former All-Star, then Miami Heat will be fine. You pair him with Jimmy Butler, that's a perfect pairing. But if Victor Oladipo is not able to do that, then maybe take a swing, maybe for Bradley Beal, for Donovan Mitchell, something like that. But we'll have to see. So that's all I'm gonna give. Oh, and shouts out to Jimmy Butler. I still don't think he's a superstar, but he had a hell of a run in these playoffs. He had a hell of a run in the Eastern Conference Finals. It was incredible, man. For the people that's saying that he should have been the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, no, he didn't win. I just can't imagine you being the the second player to do that, because I think Jerry West won the NBA Finals MVP and he didn't win. I can't imagine you being the second person or the first person in the modern day to do that. And it's like, well, Jimmy Butler was an Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Like, are you going to be with the Boston Celtics as they celebrate because you have to come back out and give? I couldn't see that, man. To me, it has to go to the winner. If LeBron James does not get the NBA Finals MVP, in 2015, then it's not going to happen. And I'm of the belief that he should not have got it because he didn't win. I think you have to win. I think at that point, if you give it to Jimmy Butler, which, by the way, he was incredible. This is not me saying Jimmy Butler was trash or anything. But if you give the Eastern Conference Finals MVP or any MVP to a losing team or losing player, at that point, it kind of turns into a participation trophy, and that's the last thing that you want. So I don't think Jimmy Butler should have won, and I'm glad that, Jason Tatum won it, which he should. So now let's talk about the teams that are actually in the NBA Finals. Let's talk about Boston for a second. Let's talk about how Boston got here. So a lot of people are talking about. Well, first let me say shouts out to Boston. Boston had one of the most improbable trips, not just to the NBA Finals, but to the playoffs. You remember, man, back in December, like early on, Boston was looking like a disaster. You had Marcus Smart calling out Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to the public. People were calling for Ime Udoka's job. They were below 500. They couldn't get nothing right. They were terrible defensively. It was just bad. And it wasn't not only did this team didn't look like that's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people were fueling you have to separate Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. One of the biggest reasons for that, I talked about this last episode, and I think I talked about this on the GOAT. First of all, I'm going to link it down in the description. The GOAT Talk podcast, I was just on it. Shouts out again to Marcus. I'll link the episode in the description below. Go check it out on his platform. Do what you got. Oh, go subscribe to him too. But one of the biggest reasons why, I'm just going to speak for myself. One of the biggest reasons why I said that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown should have been separated at that time was because they did a lot. They did the same thing. It was kind of the Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum problem. Not saying that Jason Tatum's, Damian Lillard, but Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum did the same thing. While yes, Damian Lillard did it better than CJ McCollum, they did the same thing, which is why there was always a cap. There was always a cap that the Portland Trail Blazers would hit because neither one of them played defense, but they were both incredibly gifted offensive players. Same thing as Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. They both were crazy offensive players. Jaylen Brown can put up 40. Jason Tatum can put up 40. Now, yes, Jason Tatum, in my opinion, is better than Jaylen Brown, but they both gave you offensive weaponry pretty much. However, on the defensive side of the ball, neither one of them dedicated themselves to the defensive side of the ball, which I think it was big that they got Ime Udoka and the fact that Marcus Smart called them out. Because ever since then, Boston has been on a tear, not only defensively, and I talked about this a couple episodes ago, or last episode, this team is led by not only the defense from Marcus Smart, but led by the leadership of Jason Tatum. And you could tell once Jason Tatum dedicated himself to the defensive side of the ball, Jaylen Brown followed, and the team itself followed. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I think they're here. And that's one of the biggest reasons why they made one of the biggest turnarounds we've seen in NBA history. Again, this team did not look like this team, as talented as they were, and most of the same players are here from the beginning of the season, this team looked like a lottery team. And now we are talking about them in the NBA Finals. So let's talk about their playoff run. A lot of people are saying, Boston had the hardest run. Boston had the hardest run to make it to the NBA Finals. And I'm going to push back on that just a little bit. Not saying that they had a easy run. Let me not disrespect anybody in the NBA. Let me not disrespect Boston. But this notion that they had the hardest run, I want to push back on that. And this is what I mean. Did they go against the hardest players? Yes. When you got to go against Kyrie, KD round 1, Giannis round 2, and then Jimmy Butler and the Heat round 3, yeah, of course that's a tough challenge. That is a tough challenge all around. Especially those are we talk about superstars that you have to go against. So that's tough. But let's first talk about that Boston and Brooklyn series. Yes, you went up against Kevin Durant. Yes, you went up against Kyrie Irving. But I would argue that is probably the best matchup that you would want in the first round. Why? Because the only thing that you really have to do is guard Kyrie Irving and KD. Now, yes, that's easier said than done. But when you have the Linky and the defenders that Boston has, the game plan at that point is, hey, if Seth Curry beats us, if Andre Drummond beats us, if Blake Griffin beats us, if Nick Claxton beats us, then we lose. That's just how it's going to be. But we're going to throw everything at Kyrie Irving. We're going to throw everything at KD. And something has to be said. So we talk about that, that's the hardest. Boston had the hardest trip. Yet we've been killing, or people have been killing, Brooklyn this entire. Kyrie Irving played half this, or didn't even play half the season. They have a lot of old heads, Dragic and Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge. They have a lot of old heads. They have a lot of They have a lot of one-dimensional players. A lot of players that just played offense and not any defenders outside of Andre Drummond, which they got in a trade for James Harden. So I'm not going to take away the fact that they did, yes, sweep Kyrie Irving and KD, but I would contend that Brooklyn was an easier series than you think, because yes, it's harder said than done stopping KD, but they did what they were supposed to do. They just threw bodies at him, and honestly, while yes, it was a sweep, those were some very close games. Game 1, Jason Tatum had to do a game winner. Those were some close games. Then you go to round 2 against Milwaukee. And one of the biggest reasons why I think that it went 7 games is because let me just say this. I think that if Chris Middleton played, Boston would have lost. And I think that because what you're doing at this point is you're asking Drew Holiday to do something that he wasn't even brought on this team to do. Not saying that he can't score, because we know the Drew Holiday from the 76ers, the Drew Holiday from New Orleans, he's able to score the ball. Not saying he's a supreme scorer, but he's able to score the ball. What you're asking Drew Holiday to do is, Milwaukee brought Drew Holiday onto the team to be a solid defender and hit a couple shots, which is exactly what he was doing in that series. The problem is now with Chris Middleton out, which is pretty much their best, shooter, their best player to put the ball on the ground and get a jump shot outside of putting the ball on the ground and get to the rim, which is Giannis. You're pretty much. Milwaukee was a 1-2 punch. Offensively, you had Giannis that can control the paint and control some of the mid-range, and you have Chris Middleton that control the mid-range and three-point line. Well, you take Chris Middleton out, now you're asking players like Drew Holiday, you're asking players like Bobby Portis, you're asking players like Brooke Lopez to shoulder more of an offensive load that they weren't brought there to do. So I would say that was an easier trip because, yes, you had to go against Giannis, and it's tough going against Giannis. I mean, we just saw him have a 50-point game in the finals just a year ago. But without Chris Middleton, that changes the entire flow of the Milwaukee Bucks. So I would say that's a little easier, That's a little, that of course, not a little, but not having Chris Middleton is huge. And then we get to Miami. I don't know. Now you can say injuries was a big cause for it. You can say injuries as far as, Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler to a certain extent, Kyle Lowry. You can say that injuries affected Miami, but I will. Miami is if you really think about it, man, Miami, even though they were one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the regular season, they just stopped hitting. And honestly, Miami wasn't that, even though, yes, they beat Philly, they weren't the best this entire playoff run. Bam Adebayo, ever since, Bam Adebayo didn't have a good playoff series at maybe the first round. But outside of that, it wasn't that good. And we saw one reason why I'm kind of discouraged more than encouraged about Boston beating Miami is isn't that good offensively, or at least they weren't that good offensively. Not to mention the fact there's 2 players that are playing extended amount of minutes that are undrafted free agent or undrafted, and that means something in the league. I mean, there's not a lot of Fred VanVleets. There's not a lot of Ryan Clarks. Usually, if you're undrafted, it's for a reason. And now you're depending on a Max Strus to be big because Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero couldn't. You're asking Gabe Vincent to be big because Kyle Lowry and Victor Oladipo a lot of the times couldn't do it. That just doesn't bode well. You know what I mean? So, yes, you had Jimmy Butler, who had an exceptional game, 6 and 7. And that's why I said I'm kind of discouraged, because if Jimmy Butler would have hit that shot, this would have been a completely different conversation. But that's just how I see it. You know what I mean? Now, one thing I will say, and I'll talk about this a little bit on the Golden State side. Golden State plays differently than anybody else that Boston has played. And that's kind of why I think it's a disadvantage. One is a disadvantage because Boston, there's not one player on Boston I think that's even been to the NBA Finals. So and people could say it's just another game. Yeah, okay. Okay. But Boston has not played a team that's like Golden State. Now, to their credit, there is not another team in the NBA like Golden State, but you played a lot of teams that had to be ISO heavy. And what I mean had to be, Brooklyn is more ISO heavy. It's KD and Kyrie take turns one-on-one. That's not going to work with Boston. In Milwaukee, because Chris Middleton's there, or Chris Middleton was gone, I'm sorry, and Drew Holiday isn't the offensive weapon that Chris Middleton is, you kind of force Giannis to have to put his head down and keep going to the rim time and time again. And as we know, over a series, that kind of boggles you down and weighs you down. Same thing for Miami. You didn't really have to worry about PJ Tucker's not hitting 15 points. Bam Adebayo definitely he was a no-show. I mean, he averaged 19 points a game in the regular season and only averaged 14 in the playoffs, I believe. So it was pretty much Jimmy Butler and nothing. And even that, Jimmy Butler almost got it. So Boston has not played a team that is like Golden State. And I think that is kind of a disadvantage. Now, on the flip side, we can talk about what we'll talk about in a second. Golden State hasn't really played a team like Boston this playoff series, or this playoff run. But, Jason Tatum, he has been their consistent. I mean, shouts out for him for winning the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. He's been there consistent. He has to be consistent. And that's, I talked about this, I think, a couple episodes again about superstars and stars. It's like one of the biggest reasons why I don't have Jason Tatum as a superstar yet is because of his consistency, as far as you don't really know what you're going to get. You know the talent-wise how good he is, but there can be games where he'll have 20 points and disappear. Then there'll be games when he have a loud 30. And you kind of... He's been there constant, as well as Jaylen Brown has been good, Marcus Smart has been good. It's been good. And it got Boston now is in the NBA Finals. So, shouts out to them. Now let's go over to the Golden State side. Golden State, to talk about them, you can't just talk about this entire season. You have to talk about probably the last 3 or 4. This really started with Klay Thompson going down in the 2019 NBA Finals, tearing his ACL. Then KD then leaves after because he ruptures his Achilles as well, or he ruptures his Achilles. They had DeMarcus Cousins, he left, and then next year Klay Thompson, he ruptures his Achilles, so that's a whole nother year. And then of course Steph Curry breaks his hand and he's out for majority of the season. And this year James Wiseman, he wasn't what he was supposed to be. One thing that a lot of people were saying, and always said, was a lot of people were closing the door on Golden State, which I understand. I mean, the players are getting older. You don't know what Klay Thompson was going to be when he came back from injury. Draymond Green isn't the most offensively gifted player, and he may have to be later on in his career, later in his career with his, seeing his defensively and athleticism kind of goes down. What is Steph is going to be like with a broken hand or after a broken hand? Those were the questions, you know what I mean? Those were the questions coming in, and a lot of people were saying, well, let's just wait to see. Let's just wait to see how they are, because a team that has a healthy Steph, Klay, and Draymond, as we've seen, can take a team to the finals, as we saw in 2015. If we don't want to give the credit to 2016, 17, or 18, so this year has been a roller coaster, and what I mean by roller coaster, they start off hot. I don't know if people remember, but Golden State was the clear-cut best team to start off. Jordan Poole emerged as one of the best, and in my opinion, the sixth man of the year, or no, I'm not sixth man, most improved player this year, even though he didn't win it. But Golden State they were humming. Then move a little bit forward. Klay Thompson comes back from injury. That was big, and they had to incorporate him. Then Steph Curry rolls his ankle towards the end of the season on a Marcus Smart dive for the ball. It's been a tough select. Defensively they kind of waned. Draymond Green went out. It was they got hit with injury, and they also got hit with regular season wolves or whatever. But when you talk about this playoffs, let's talk about round one. Round one, Golden State and Denver. Now, kind of like we talked about with Boston, Golden State kind of dealt with. Let me say this. Let's just talk about this one. So Denver and Golden State. I think that, without Jamal Murray, without Michael Porter Jr., it's a lot easier to play and defend Denver, especially when all they have is the two-time MVP. I'm not going to say all they have. When they have Nikola Jokic, who is a two-time MVP. But when you have a team full of a team full of cohesive players, it's going to be tough. And I didn't even mention Andrew Wiggins and how good he's been. So you get them out the way. You get them out the way in, 6 games? Or no, 5 games. Then you go against Memphis. Memphis, the second overall seed in the West. John Morant, Triple J, Dylan Brooks, Desmond Bane. And that game, John Morant goes out. We know about Game 6 Klay. and he goes crazy in Game 6, and they ultimately beat Memphis. Then you go up against Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks, which a lot of people were shocked about, including myself, because I thought it would be Phoenix and Golden State. Hell, a lot of people thought Phoenix was good enough to win it all. But you go up against Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks, and that is an easier plight because you're going up against just pretty much a one-man band. If Jalen Brunson beats you, if Reggie Bullock beats you, hey, you win. But you beat them in 5 games. And here's why I say there's a lot of similarities to Boston's playoff run to the finals and Golden State's playoff run to the finals. Boston had to play 1 or 2 man-centric teams. And what I mean is there's a 1 and 2 is good, talking about Brooklyn at this one, and there's a massive drop for 3. I'm not going to say there's massive. For Milwaukee, you have Giannis, and then there's kind of a massive drop between him and Jrue Holiday, and that's no disrespect to Jrue Holiday, but he's not Giannis. And same as Miami, at least offensively, you had Jimmy Butler and then a massive drop, and then whoever the hell you want to insert second. Golden State kind of had the same thing. So you have Denver, you have Nikola Jokic, and it was a massive drop, and the next best person was Aaron Gordon. That didn't work. That wasn't doing nothing against Draymond Green and Golden State. Then next round, Ja Morant goes out. You have Desmond Bane. I think that's probably the hardest test they had. You had Desmond Bane, you had Dillon Brooks, but Dillon Brooks did miss 2 games. Well, pretty much essentially 2 games because he got suspended most of Game 3 and missed all of Game 4. And then same thing for Dallas. You have Luka and then a massive drop, and then it's Jalen Brunson with Tim Hardaway being out and some of those players being out. Here's the difference, however, that I have between Boston's run and Golden State's run. To me, Golden State's run sharpened another tool that needed to be sharpened to get to the NBA Finals. What do I mean by that? Round 1, you're going against Nikola Jokic. To me, you're going up against the best center in the playoffs. Now, of course, you can have an argument between him and Joel Embiid, but you're going up against the best center in the playoffs. So that really sharpens Draymond Green's defense because going into the playoffs, he was still getting his feet back, and he really wasn't the best defensively coming into the playoffs due to, trying to get himself back from injury, as well as Kevon Looney. Kevon Looney wasn't playing, he because of the whole depth lineup, his minutes are sparing, but you needed him to be right, and he, going against Nikola Jokic, bada bing, bada boom. Next round, Memphis. What Memphis did, especially with Ja Morant being out, and that's no offense to Ja Morant, but Memphis is a drastically better defensive team without Ja Morant. That's just how it is, and that's not a shot at Ja Morant. That's just truth. They are a better defensive team without Ja Morant. Well, Memphis probably, outside of maybe Miami, is the most physical team that was in the playoffs. And when you have, Desmond Bane and Dillon Brooks going up against Steph and Clay and Jordan Poole, now you're preparing yourself for the physicality. You're preparing yourself for a physical team that can be Boston. And then you have Dallas and Luka Doncic. To me, that series was solely, I guess, quote unquote, coming to the party moment for Andrew Wiggins. You're preparing now. He didn't stop he didn't stop Luka Doncic, but what he did do is he did slow him down. He did slow him down to the point where now you need a Jalen Brunson. Now you need a Reggie Bullock. Now you need players like that to step up, and they were unable to do that. Now, it wasn't just Andrew Wiggins. They were throwing everything, which we knew. They were going to throw the kitchen sink at Luka Doncic. They had Andrew Wiggins, who was his primary defender. They had, the way they were defending it was, Andrew's going to get it most. Draymond Green was going to come in at times. Clay's going to. It was defense by committee, and they were able to prevail. What I'm saying is this: now, when you go into this series against Boston, that is Golden State. There's a lot of questions and a lot of iron that need to be sharpened, and I think they got sharpened. How was Kevon Looney going to be, especially against Al Horford and Robert Williams? Well, we saw Kevon Looney play incredible against Nikola Jokic, play incredible against Triple J as well as Steven Adams, and play incredible against I know he was the biggest player, but Maxi Kleber and Dwight Powell. Now, no, I'm not going to disrespect Al Horford and Robert Williams and say that they're Max Kleber and Dwight Powell, but Kevon Looney has gotten better through this playoff run. Same thing as Andrew Wiggins. First round, you had to go. You didn't really have to do much. Second round, you had to go against Dylan Brooks. You had to go against a Desmond Bane. You had to go against those type players. And then third round, you had to go against Luka. So I just think both teams. To me, these are the top two teams in the playoff. I mean, top two teams in the NBA. I think they got it right. I understand that we can look at the regular season and think, well, what about Phoenix? What about Memphis? What about some of the other teams? But I just think that these are the top two teams that are in the playoffs, or that are in the NBA. And I think that this is the best case scenario that we as fans in the NBA as a whole could have gotten. So what's my prediction? Let me just talk about the X factor. Let me talk about how each team can win first. Now let's go with X factor. What's the X factor for Golden State? To me, it's very simple. The X factor for Golden State is Andrew Wiggins. You're going to be guarding the best player on Boston majority of the time, which is Jason Tatum. And as we've seen, and that doesn't take away because Jaylen Brown can go off, Marcus Smart can go off, but the head of the snake is Jason Tatum, and I think Andrew Wiggins is going to be huge, just like he was huge in the Dallas series. He's going to be huge for this series. I think that I said earlier that Golden State is unlike any team that Boston has seen in this playoffs, and the same thing can be said for Golden State and Boston. Boston is. They have 7 to 8 people that plays exceptional defense. 7 to 8 players. And they're going to be switching on everything because they can. Not only that, Boston's offense is not a drastic drop from their offense to their defense. Like when you look, Denver, their offense is good, but their defense really isn't. Memphis, they're pretty much the same thing. And Dallas, pretty much the same thing. Boston they're pretty much equal opportunity. Their defense and their offense is incredible. They also have about 3 players that can go off. 4 players that can go off. That is Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and on any given night, it can be Al Horford. Golden State hasn't had to really defend an entire team as this entire playoff run, outside of maybe Memphis after Ja Morant, but they haven't really had to defend an entire team. They had to just focus in on one player, and the rest will follow, pretty much. So my X factor for Golden State is Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins is going to be tasked more than likely with guarding Jason Tatum, and I understand Golden State is they can't really switch because they're going to try to not switch. They're going to, because what I know what Boston, what Boston's going to do is they're going to try and get Steph Curry on a Jason Tatum or a Jaylen Brown. That's what they're going to try to do, which is the smart thing to do. Steph Curry is the weakest defender on Golden State, especially their starting 5. So that's what they're going to try to do. That's what they did against that's what Boston did against Miami. Anytime Max Strus, anytime Duncan Robinson, anytime Tyler Hero was guarding Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, it was a field day. So I think that's what they're going to do. So Golden State's going to try their hard. Golden State is probably going to try to hide, or they're probably going to put Steph Curry or Marcus Smart. That's pretty much what they're probably going to try to do. Because Marcus Smart can be hit or miss. Now, if he's hitting, it's tough. But if he's missing, it's tough. So the X factor for Golden State is Andrew Wiggins, and the X factor for Boston is Marcus Smart. I say Marcus Smart because Marcus Smart, like I just said, when he's hitting, like when he has 20, 25 points, Boston is damn near unbeatable. Because, I mean, when he's going off, usually Jason Tatum's going off, usually Jaylen Brown's going off. And when you also pair that with Marcus Smart's defense, that's tough. I don't know how you do that. You know, that's tough. So that's definitely going to be, not to mention he's going to be playing, he's more than likely going to be hip to hip with Steph Curry the entire way. You do not want Steph Curry to go off. So Marcus Smart will be taxed with again, outside of Kyrie Irving, Marcus Smart ain't played nobody like Steph Curry. In fact, not even because with Steph Curry's ball movement and his willingness to move without the ball, Marcus Smart has not had to play someone this playoffs like Steph Curry. So that is the X factor for Boston, and the X factor for Golden State is Andrew Wiggins. Now, how can Boston win this series? To me, Boston is the best defensive team in this series. They're the better defensive team. When you have Jaylen Brown, when you have Jason Tatum, when you have Grant Williams, you can come off the bench. When you have Robert Williams, when you have Al Horford, when you have Marcus Smart, who won the Defensive Player of the Year this year, they have a lot of interchangeable pieces. And the way you have to be able to slow down Golden State's offense, and you have to. What we've seen this entire playoffs is Boston's going to give up runs. They're going to give up runs. They did it in every single series. The thing that they're going to have to make sure is that their runs don't kill them. Their runs haven't had to kill them. Like their runs hasn't backfired. It almost backfired in Game 7 against against Miami. Their runs. Milwaukee's runs kind of kept them in the series, which is why there was a 7-game series. And even though they did sweep Brooklyn, Brooklyn had runs. It's just they couldn't sustain it because, Bruce Brown, they left him wide open. That's not the case with Golden State. Golden State is going to go on runs. And you have to hope that your defense is able to I'm not going to say counteract, but able to keep you afloat, especially if you're up. So the only way that they're going to win. Oh, and Jason Tatum has to be great offensively, because I think Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, arguably both of them, they have to be great offensively, because you're gonna throw Andrew Wiggins, they're gonna throw Klay Thompson, they're gonna throw Draymond Green. We're gonna see if Andre Iguodala gets some minutes. I think Gary Payton II is gonna be back. They're going to throw defenders at them, and they're going to have to score. We saw Jason Tatum, I will say this. Miami played some rugged defense, but when you talk about who was guarding Jason Tatum, it really wasn't that much of a I don't know. It's Max Strus ain't getting it done. And Max Strus is most definitely not Andrew Wiggins, nor is he Klay Thompson, nor is he Draymond Green. Hell, he's not even Andre Iguodala at his old age. So the X factor, the way that Boston can win is you have to beat. I think it's officiating as well. I think officiating is going to be play a part. Now, if it is how it usually is, and officials let a lot of physicality go, then that's in Boston's favor, because Boston is a better defensive team. They have bigger players. They have more of rugged style. They are, if the officiating allows that, then Boston has an advantage. If they call a lot of stuff and they're playing kind of close to the hip, and they are, they're letting the more finesse go, then that is the clear advantage of Golden State. It's a smaller team, but you also have Steph, Klay, Jordan Poole. Yeah. Another X factor, I just thought about this, is Jordan Poole. Another X factor for Golden State is Jordan Poole, because their goal is to do not let Steph Curry or Klay Thompson go off, because we know the energy that, Klay Thompson brings to a team when he's going crazy, and we know who Steph is. So Jordan Poole is going to have to be big. He needs to be better than he was. Jordan Poole really has only had one good series, and that was the first one. I think the physicality definitely took a toll on him in Memphis, and I don't think he needed to show up as much for Denver or for Dallas series. So this series different, but that's how Boston can win. Defense and Jason Tatum's going to have to be incredible. How Golden State can win, you have to turnovers. Golden State has always been plagued with turnovers. They've always just been a high turnover team. Not usually you kind of equate turnovers to low IQ, but no, they kind of overpass a lot, or they kind of do the flashy passes, and it just doesn't work at times. If they're able to limit their turnovers and able to hit shots, if Steph Curry is able to, kind of come to form, he didn't have the greatest. He hasn't had the greatest 3-point shooting playoffs out. Well, not playoffs. First round he did really well, but if he's able to get that back and win the Marcus Smart Steph Curry matchup, then it's going to be tough, because one thing, like I said, my Golden State has the difference between Golden State and Miami. There's a lot of differences, but one of the differences, it's not just one person. It's not just a Jimmy Butler show. You have Steph Curry that can give you 30, Klay that can give you 30, Andrew Wiggins can give you 15 to 25, Jordan Poole can give you 30, Draymond Green can give you a 10, 10, 10, and 10 triple-double. They can hit you with a lot of air. And the good thing is they're unselfish. So if they see that Jordan Poole's going crazy, they're going to give it to Jordan Poole. If they see that Klay Thompson's going crazy, they're going to give it to Klay. That's just how they are. That's an unselfish team. So they need to be able to just hit shots and play defense, because Boston can hit threes. Again, Grant Williams, he's able to hit. I think he's like shooting 45% if he's wide open. They need to be able to defend. I know it's easier hit shots and defend, but that's definitely the case for for Golden State with Boston, because as we've seen, Golden State can go through defensive lows, and they're going to need to capitalize on the runs that Boston's going to allow them to have. At this point, they've allowed multiple runs. Boston has allowed multiple runs in every single series. So I'm not here thinking that they're not going to be able to do it, or they're not going to give up runs this series. The problem is, or the thing for Golden State is, can you take advantage of those runs? Can you take advantage of those times when you're going to have a 10-0 run, or you're going to have a 7-0 run? Like, what happens at that point? So what are my predictions? So a lot of people are going to say that this is just another game. That's what the players are going to tell themselves. This is just another game. But it's not. This is the NBA Finals. And I do think that there's something to be had where not one player from Boston has been in the finals. Now, I do think that it's helped that, I think Jason Tatum has been in 5 Game 7s, and Miami, and Boston has been in 2 Game 7s this playoff run. But there's something to be said, having the experience of an NBA Finals, not to mention the fact that, like I said before, neither one of these teams have played a team this playoffs like the other team. And I do think that kind of bodes well for Golden State, because I think because of the experience, they're able to make better or more adjustments if needed. And I like Jason Tatum. I like Jaylen Brown. Jason Tatum is an incredible player. I just think the experience and the fact that Golden State, Miami almost beat Boston with 1 score. Milwaukee almost beat Boston with pretty much 1 score. Even though Brooklyn got swept, it took, we don't really talk about Brooklyn. But Miami almost beat them with 1 score. The entire series, pretty much. That's not going to be. You don't. Golden State just didn't have one scorer. They have a multitude of players that they can just they can go off. So I have Golden State in 6. I just think the experience and the fact that you don't know who it can be any given night. Hell, we even if you look at all the series that that Golden State's been in, we praise Kevon Looney in the Dallas series. We praise Andrew Wiggins in the Dallas series. In the Denver series, we praise Draymond Green for his defense on what's his name, on Nikola Jokic, as well as Steph Curry's offense. In the Memphis series, we praise Klay Thompson, Game 6 Klay. So you don't, not to mention Jordan Poole was I think he averaged like 30 points in the Denver series. So it could be anybody on any given basis. So I have Warriors in 6. I just think that we know how important this is. Well, both teams clearly, but Golden State knows what to do. Even though you have younger players like Andrew Wiggins has never been here. Neither is Jordan Poole. But the nucleus, the Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Kevon Looney, Andre Iguodala, they've been here, and Steve Kerr, they've been here, so they know what it takes. So I have Warriors in 6, and game 1 is on Thursday. They killing me, man, with every game at like 9:00 at night. They're killing me, bro. But it is what it is, I guess. It is what it is. But yeah, I have Warriors in 6. What do you guys think? Who do you guys have? Who do you think the X factors are? Let me know what you think. We'll leave it in the comments. We'll talk about it. So, and also, like I said, shouts out to Marcus's podcast, the Go Talk podcast. I was just on his podcast 2 days ago, talking about giving our NBA predictions. I'll leave that episode in the link below, so y'all go check it out. Also, go subscribe to his joint too. So, yeah. So moving forward, I do want to say shouts out to Darvin Ham, who is now the new head coach for the Los Angeles Lakers. I do think it was the right hire. A lot of people were throwing out, Doc Rivers. A lot of people were throwing out a lot of different names. I do think they got the right person. They got, Darvin Ham. He was the assistant coach for Milwaukee. He's a defensive-minded guy. We know how poor Lakers defense was last year. I just hope that they're going to be patient with Darvin Ham. And I mean that by Darvin Ham. Look at this roster. This roster, Phil Jackson, the Chicago Bulls, Phil Jackson could have coached this roster, and it would have got the same result. This is a poor roster. This is a bad roster. LeBron James is getting older. Anthony Davis is always hurt. Russell Westbrook did not have a good season last year, and he's regressing. And we all know that he just doesn't fit with LeBron James. He's not the player that he was in OKC. I just hope that they have patience with him, and I hope that he's able. They say that he's able to make his own or pick his own staff. They say that the Buss and Rambis family aren't gonna have their fingerprints in it, which I truly hope, because I think that they got the right guy. I don't know if he's gonna take them to championship heights, which. If we want to be completely honest with the Lakers, they have been terrible for these past. Outside of 2020 when they won the championship, they've been terrible. I mean, RIP Kobe, he had some terrible teams. You remember Robert Sacre? Robert Sacre was Jordan Hill was a starting center for the Lakers. It's been bad, and I just think a lot of people have that aura because it's the Lakers, and now that you have LeBron in 2020 happen, but I just think they're pretty far from a championship, especially with this team, and I don't know. It's going to be hard because there's a lot of players that's not going to be there. You're going to have to bring a lot of players in, so you're building that team. You're also trying to figure out what you're going to do with Russell Westbrook because, in my opinion, he's pretty much untradeable right now. And I don't understand why you would. I guess culture-wise maybe, but a lot of people are saying maybe get John Wall for Russell. No. So you're going to incorporate pretty much a whole new team with Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis. It's going to be tough. So I just hope that they give Darvin Ham Darvin Ham the freedom to do what he needs to do, as well as just be patient with him, because we know how they are with new coaches, especially when there's unrealistic expectations. If you think that in the next 3 years that at least this iteration of the Lakers are going to be good enough to win a championship, you got another thing coming. No, it's not going to happen. I promise you. I'm not saying that something drastic can't happen, but this iteration of the Lakers is not winning in the next 3 to 5 years. It's just not happening. Maybe get to the playoffs, maybe win a round or two, but they're not winning the championship, especially when you have a lot of the young talent coming in. You know what I mean? It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So I hope that they don't get antsy like, oh, we have to fire him, because I do think that this is the right hire. This is a great hire, and let's just see how it is. But shouts out to Darvin Ham for being the head coach of the LA Lakers. So moving forward, it's been a rough go for Liz Cambage. I'm in the news. I'm gonna just say that. So this isn't a new story. This is a pretty old story. Liz Cambage, at first report, we knew that there was kind of tension going on with her in Australia, seeing as though she pretty much wasn't going to play for Australia ever again, from what we heard. And we were just like, yo, what's going on? Now reports are saying, no, it's really Australia saying, yo, we don't want you, my G, because Liz Cambage was saying some offensive things to the Nigerian team during a scrimmage, which is crazy because now she plays for the LA Sparks, and I think 2 of her teammates are of Nigerian descent, the Bumake sisters. I don't know. It's tough. Look. Now, you never, unless there's like video or whatever, you don't know exactly what happened. But I will say this. Liz Cambage is the only person pretty much saying, no, this ain't happened. That's damn near everyone that was there for Team Nigeria and damn near everyone was there for Team Australia are pretty much saying, nah, she said what she said. I'm not going to repeat what she said. You can go look that up. But this ain't looking good, bro. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But this ain't looking good. I just need to shed some light because this is serious. And which is also crazy because Liz Cambage is of Nigerian descent. So, she's like half Australian, half Nigerian. I don't know what the hell's going on, but I do know that the thing that they said she said was offensive. And I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe nothing's going to happen from it, but I do need to shine some light because what she said was wild from what they're saying she said. But again, she's the only person that's saying, oh, nah, I didn't say this. She's the only one. Damn near everyone that's come out, everyone else has pretty much had the same exact story. No, she said that, bro. So I don't know. I don't know what happened. I'm just shedding light on it. It is. I don't know what's gonna. Maybe you suspend her a little bit. I don't know, but I know that what she said was wild, like wild. And yeah, nah, I couldn't do it. That's crazy. But lastly, before we go, the unpopular topic of the day. Again, I've said this before. I've been saying this all through this episode, but shouts out to Marcus in the GOAT Talk podcast. I was just on the podcast the other day talking about the NBA Finals, and Marcus said something that really sparked something in me. We were talking about legacy talk. We were talking about he pretty much asked me, do I think it's like dumb that we talk about, or he said we should stop talking about legacy talk because it's we should just stop doing that. And for my unpopular topic, so shouts out to you, Marcus. My unpopular topic of the day, and I said this on his podcast, but I'm going to say it here. It's not the fact that we are talking about legacies. Everyone has a legacy. When we talk about players like Charles Barkley, one of the greatest basketball players to ever play. However, one thing that's said about his legacy is he's never won a championship. LeBron James' legacy will go down as arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. Same thing as Michael Jordan. It's like sometimes your legacy is so great, it just negates a lot of negative stuff. For instance, we talk about Michael Jordan. Nobody talks about, I think he only won it was 1-9, one playoff game before Scottie Pippen came. We talk about how great LeBron James is outside of people like Skip Bayless. Nobody really talks about what happened with the Dallas Mavericks series. Now, LeBron James has been to like 10 straight, or was like 10 straight NBA finals, but nobody talks about that. Legacy is what you leave behind, like what we remember you as. Steph Curry's legacy will go down as the greatest shooter of all time, in my opinion. A lot of people say Vince Carter's legacy is the greatest dunker of all time. It's just where you leave legacies. And what I think needs to happen is we need to slow down on the legacy talk with players so early on. And what do I mean by that? All this week, we've heard who is this championship legacy, like whose legacy is more at stake for this championship, Steph Curry or Jason Tatum. Or we talked about, when Luka did games 5 tarnish Luka's legacy. What is Ja Morant's legacy after X, or after losing to Golden State? Yes, these young players will leave a legacy. That's just how it's going to be. But I don't think we need to I don't think we need to start writing it now. I mean, think about it. We don't know what's going to happen with Luka. We don't know what's going to happen with Trae Young. We don't know what's going to happen with Ja Morant. We don't know what's going to happen with Zion Williamson. We don't know what's going to happen with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Jordan Poole. There's a lot of young players. We need to let their careers blossom out. We need to let their careers play out. We don't need to continue to talk about legacy, and they're under 25. They still, Lord willing, have 10, 15 years left. A lot can happen in 10 to 15 years. Don't believe me? Look at Steph Curry's career. Remember how, he was on the trade block a lot of times due to his ankle problems. You look at how we looked at Steph Curry, the beginning of his career with the injuries and playing for an organization that couldn't get right as far as wins with Golden State. And now look how it is. Imagine if we would have just stopped his legacy after year 3 or year 4 or year 5. We would not have this Stephen Curry, or we would be blind to this Stephen Curry. Imagine who was another player that Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd came to the league, couldn't shoot to save his life. He left the league as one of the greatest three-point shooters ever. What I'm saying is, and I guess my unpopular topic of the day is, we need to really chill out with this whole legacy talk, especially with younger talent, because we don't know what's going to happen. What happens if Ja Morant really starts developing a three-point shot? What happens if Luka really starts playing defense? Same thing as Trae Young. What happens if Zion gets his body right? Like, all this stuff that we're talking is going to change, and we're going to forget about this. So I think we don't need to put the pressure on, what is Jason Tatum's legacy? Bro, Jason Tatum has been in the league for 3, 4, 5 years. Chill out on that, man. We need to chill out. The legacy talk does not need to start so early, because we don't know what these players are going to matriculate into. That's all I'm saying. And there you have it. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I appreciate you guys. If you want a Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve, joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. I don't know if you can see, but it's hot as hell today. I'm sweating bullets. So go get your Unpopular Podcast t-shirt today. Hey, they look good on you. Also, please subscribe to whoever you're listening. Please subscribe to whoever you're watching. It definitely means a lot to me. And until next time, much love.